revealed how she waited. In the midst of a bustling house, Satyavama sat beside Draupadi, seeking her counsel on how to win back the affection of her husband, Krishna. The wise and loving queen Draupadi smiled knowingly and began to share with Satyavama a timeless secret to capturing one's partner's heart. Dear friend, Draupadi said gently, I shall reveal to you a way that is free from deceit. By following this path, you will be able to draw your Lord closer to you, just as the sun draws the stars towards its radiant light. With a twinkle in her eyes, she continued, in all the worlds, including that of the celestials, there is no god equal unto the husband. When he is pleased with you, you may have every object of desire at your fingertips. When he is displeased, even these luxuries can be lost. Satyavama listened intently as Draupadi explained how a devoted wife could secure her partner's love and devotion through selfless service. It is from her husband that the wife obtains offspring and various articles of enjoyment. Draupadi said, he provides you with handsome beds and seats, robes and garlands, perfumes, great fame, and even heaven itself in the afterlife. Satyavama absorbed these words of wisdom. Draupadi emphasized the importance of cultivating a genuine connection with one's partner. One cannot obtain happiness here by means that are easy. She cautioned, indeed, the woman who is chaste obtains weal with compassion and understanding. Draupadi encouraged Satyavama to adore Krishna with friendship and love, just as one would worship a deity. To demonstrate her own devotion, Draupadi offered practical advice on how to behave in a way that wins over one's partner. When you hear the voice of your Lord at the gate, she said, rise up from your seat and stay in readiness within the room as soon as he enters your chamber. Worship him by promptly offering him a seat and water to wash his feet with each passing moment. Draupadi's words wove a tapestry of love and loyalty that would guide Satyavama on her journey to reclaiming Krishna's affections. The sun began to set over the palace. Draupadi imparted one final lesson. Whatever your Lord speaks before you, she cautioned, do not blab about it, even if it may not deserve concealment. For if any of your co-wives were to speak of it unto Vasudeva, he might be irritated with you. With these wise words, Draupadi entrusted Satyavama with the sacred responsibility of protecting her partner's trust and maintaining harmony within their household. As the two queens sat together in contemplative silence, Satyavama felt a sense of rest wash over her. She knew that she had been. As Vasampayana spoke, he revealed a poignant scene unfolding in Dwaraka. Kesava, the revered Lord Krishna, had been conversing with the illustrious sons of Pandu and the wise Brahmanas, led by Markandeya. The discussions were filled with agreeable themes, and the atmosphere was one of camaraderie. The evening drew to a close. Lord Krishna bid farewell to his friends and family. Mounting his majestic chariot, he called out for Satyavama, his beloved wife, who had been waiting anxiously by his side with great affection. She rushed towards him, embracing Draupadi, her dear friend, in a warm gesture of love. Satyavama's eyes shone with tears as she spoke to Draupadi, her voice filled with emotion. O Krishna, do not worry or grieve, she said. You will soon reclaim the earth that was taken from your husbands. They are all equal to gods in their strength and courage. Women like you, blessed with such a noble disposition and auspicious marks, can never suffer misfortune. For long Satyavama's words were laced with conviction, drawn from the ancient wisdom of her people. She continued, it is said that you will rule over this earth with your husbands, free from all troubles and strife. You will soon see Yudhishthira reigning supreme, having avenged the wrongs done by the sons of Dhritarashtra. Satyavama spoke her thoughts, turned to those who had once mocked her on her way to exile. You will behold them now, she said, with a hint of triumph, helpless and desperate, their pride and arrogance having led them to their downfall. Her words were a testament to the power of patience and perseverance. With a warm smile, Satyavama turned to Draupadi's children, Pratavendaya, Sutasama, Srutakarman, Satanaka, and Srutasna. They were all well and skilled in warfare, just like their father Arjuna. Like Abhimanyu, they had grown strong and brave under the guidance of Lord Krishna. Subhadra too was a devoted mother, caring for them with love and dedication. As Satyavama finished speaking, she walked around Draupadi's chariot, a gesture of respect and affection. Then, with a final glance at her friend, she mounted Lord Krishna's chariot, ready to embark on the journey back to Dwaraka. The chief of the Yadavas, with a comforting smile, bid farewell to Draupadi and the Pandavas setting out for his own city with swift horses. As Vaisampayana's narrative came to an end, it was clear that the bonds of love and loyalty between Lord Krishna and his family were unbreakable. The saying would remain etched in the winter had finally begun to take its toll on the sons of Pandu, forcing them to flee to the wilderness. As they made their way through the forest, they came upon a tranquil lake and woods known as Dwaita. The brothers decided to settle there far from the hustle and bustle of human civilizations. They established themselves in this new home. They were visited by many wise and venerable sages who had mastered the ancient Vedas. These revered men would often come to pay their respects to the Pandavas, and the brothers would receive them with great honor and reverence. One day a renowned Brahmana arrived at the lake, his reputation preceding him as a master of eloquence. He spent some time conversing with the Pandavas before departing for the court of King Vichitravirya. Duryodhana's father, the king, welcomed the Brahmana warmly and asked him to share his thoughts. The Brahmana began to speak of the suffering that had befallen the sons of Dharma, Yudhishthira, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva, who were now reduced to a pitiful state due to their exposure to wind and sun. He also spoke of Krishna, overwhelmed by her own hardships despite being surrounded by heroes. King Vichitravirya's heart was heavy with sorrow as he listened to the Brahmana's words. He was overcome with grief at the thought of his own sons suffering so greatly despite his efforts to calm himself. He couldn't help but think about how Yudhishthira, once a prince who slept on soft rank skins, now lay on the bare ground. Arjuna, known for his bravery and skill in battle, was now woken by birds at dawn. Instead of being serenaded with music, the king's thoughts turned to Bhima, whose wrath was building like a raging fire. He remembered how Dasasana had spoken cruel words to Yudhishthira after their defeat at Tis, and how those words had taken root in Bhima's heart. The king knew that his own actions, driven by affection for his wicked sons, had contributed to the downfall of the Kurus. As he reflected on the situation, King Vichitravirya began to ponder the nature of fate and destiny. He wondered if everything was indeed predetermined, and if so, what use were human efforts to change their circumstances. The king's thoughts turned to Arjuna, who had mastered the celestial weapons and returned to the world. Unlike most people who would rather remain in heaven, the Brahmana's words had a profound impact on King Vichitravirya, filling him with grief and regret. He realized that he, like Sakani, had behaved deceitfully towards his son, Pandu, who always acted honestly. The king knew that the hour of destruction for the Kurus had finally come, and that in the grand hall of Hastinapur, Dhritarashtra sat upon his throne, his eyes fixed on the face of his son Duryodhana. The old king's words dripped with sorrow and longing, for he knew that his own sons had been exiled from the kingdom by their cousins, the Pandavas. But Sakani, the cunning uncle of the prince, saw an opportunity to fan the flames of Duryodhana's ambition. The two men spoke in hushed tones. Karna, the mighty warrior, listened intently to their words. He was a man consumed by his own pride and arrogance. Yet he was also a skilled strategist who understood the ways of politics. Sakani's words were like a spark to dry wood, igniting a fire that would soon engulf the kingdom. Rise up, my king Sakani, urged Duryodhana. You have vanquished your enemies through your own prowess. You are the master of this earth, and all the kings of the east, south, west, and north bow to your will. The words dripped with honeyed sweetness, but beneath them lay a sharp blade that would soon cut deep into the hearts of the Pandavas. As Sakani spoke, Karna's eyes gleamed with excitement. He was a man who had always been driven by his own ambition, and now he saw a chance to help Duryodhana claim the throne that was rightfully his. The old king's words echoed in their minds. You have acquired the blazing prosperity of the Pandavas through your own intellect alone. With Sakani's words still ringing in their ears, the three men rose from their seats and began to pace around the hall. They spoke of the Pandavas who had been forced to flee their kingdom and now lived on the banks of the Dwaita, in a lake surrounded by a multitude of Brahmanas. Let us go, Sakani urged Duryodhana. Let us show them our glory, like the sun scorching everything with its hot rays. As they spoke, Karna's face twisted into a cruel smile. He was a man who reveled in the suffering of others, and now he saw a chance to add to the misery of his enemies. The thought of the Pandavas, once so proud and powerful, now reduced to living in poverty and hardship, filled him with a sense of satisfaction. Let us go, Duryodhana repeated, his voice echoing through the hall, "Let us show them our prosperity, and let them behold our glory." And with that the three men set out towards the lake, their hearts burning with ambition, and their eyes fixed on the prize that lay before them. As they departed, Sakonai's words still lingered in the air. "What happiness can be more complete than that which he enjoyeth, who, while himself in prosperity, looketh upon his foes?" In the grand halls of Hastinapura, King Duryodhana sat enthroned, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. He had just listened to Karna's words, and the prince's fervor had reignited a fire within him. Yet as he pondered the prospect of confronting his sworn enemies, the Pandavas in exile, a wave of melancholy washed over him. "Karna," Duryodhana said, his voice laced with a mixture of longing and trepidation, "your words are ever present in my mind. Alas, I fear it may not be possible for me to obtain permission from our father the king." He gestured towards Dhritarashtra, who sat on his throne, his eyes clouded with sorrow. "Indeed, he believes that the Pandavas have grown stronger through their ascetic austerities, and if he understands our true intentions, Karna, we can hardly hope to deceive him. Our purpose is clear: to destroy those exiled brothers in Dwaitavana." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "Remember how Kshetri spoke to us at the time of the dispatch. His words still echo within me. I am torn between my desire for revenge and the thought of our father's wisdom. Can we truly justify this path?" The king's eyes searched Karna's face, seeking guidance in the darkness as he pondered. A spark of mischief ignited within him. But what joy would be mine to behold Bhima and Arjuna, dressed in their makeshift attire, passing their days in paint, and Draupadi clad in red rags, her beauty still radiant despite her hardships. If only I could see them. Thus humbled, his eye shone with a fire. Slight Duryodhana's gaze turned inward once more. "But how can we achieve this? How can I persuade our father to grant us permission?" He looked at Karna, expectantly seeking the answer that would set their plan in motion. Karna smelled, his mind already racing ahead. "Fear not, my lord," he said. "I have a plan, one that will deceive even the wisest of men." And with Sakonai's son and Dasasana by his side, the three of them hatched a scheme to persuade Dhritarashtra. Night wore on, and as the stars twinkled outside, Karna approached Duryodhana. "Once more I have devised a plan," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "We shall go to Dwaitavana under the pretext of supervising our cattle stations. It is only fitting that kings should visit their herds from time to time." Sakonai joined in, his eyes gleaming with approval. "This plan is free from difficulties," he said. "Our father will surely grant us permission, or perhaps even send." In the midst of a bustling kingdom, a group of distinguished guests arrived at the court of King Dhritarashtra. Among them were Prince Duryodhana, Karna, and Sakonai, who had come to persuade the king to grant permission for their hunting expedition. The cowherd Samanga, who was familiar with the royal family's wishes, approached the king and informed him about the cattle stations that needed attention. The guests waited anxiously. Sakonai stepped forward and addressed King Dhritarashtra. "Directly, our cattle stations are in a delightful place. Now," he said, "the time for their tending and marking calves has come, and what's more, this is an excellent season for your son to go hunting. It would be fitting for you to grant permission for Duryodhana to lead our party." King Dhritarashtra listened attentively, his mind weighing the pros and cons of the request. He was concerned about the presence of the Pandavas, who had taken up residence in the vicinity of their cattle stations. "I fear that if you go there yourselves," he cautioned, "you may unintentionally provoke them. The Pandavas are mighty warriors devoted to ascetic austerities. They will not take kindly to your presence, especially with Duryodhana's pride and impulsiveness." Sakonai countered the king's concerns, assuring him that the Pandavas were under no obligation to engage with his party. "We come not to seek them out," he said. "Our intention is purely to tend our cattle and mark their calves. We mean no harm and will avoid any conflict." King Dhritarashtra was torn, but eventually granted permission for Duryodhana's expedition, albeit reluctantly. With the king's blessing, Prince Duryodhana set off towards the lake of Dwaitavana, accompanied by a massive entourage that included Karna, Dasasana, Subala's son, and many other brothers. The prince was surrounded by thousands of soldiers, merchants, bards, and traders who followed him to the forest in great excitement. As they journeyed, the air was filled with the sound of drums beating out a lively rhythm, accompanied by the chatter of the crowd and the clanging of armor. It was as if the very winds themselves had come alive, creating a deafening tumult that echoed through the land. Finally, after many days of travel, Duryodhana's party arrived at the lake of Dwaitavana. The prince took up quarters at a distance of 4 miles from the lake, surrounded by his retinue and the endless throngs of people who had accompanied him on this grand adventure. The sun was setting over the forest, casting a warm orange glow over the landscape. King Duryodhana, determined to find the perfect spot for his cattle stations, had been traveling through the woods for days. Finally, he came upon a beautiful clearing surrounded by towering trees and a babbling brook. His attendants, eager to please their king, quickly set to work constructing an impressive abode for him. As they worked, Duryodhana's eyes wandered over the lush green grass and vibrant wildflowers that swayed gently in the breeze. He spotted his cattle grazing peacefully in the distance, their coats glistening in the fading light. With a sense of satisfaction, he began to inspect each animal, checking their limbs and marks with great care. A king's task was not just about counting heads, it was also about identifying which cows needed to be tamed and which kind were still nursing their young. As he worked, his attendants brought him news of the progress being made on the abode, and soon the sound of hammers ringing out and the scent of freshly cut wood filled the air. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Duryodhana's troops and citizens began to emerge from the forest, eager to join in the festivities. The king, surrounded by his ladies in waiting, distributed wealth and food among them. His generosity and joy infectious. The sound of laughter and music filled the air as the herdsmen, skilled in singing and dancing, entertained the crowd with their talents. But Duryodhana's pleasure-seeking was not without its challenges. As he ventured deeper into the forest, he encountered fierce beasts, hyenas, buffaloes, deer, and bears, which his archers quickly dispatched. The king, ever the hunter, reveled in the thrill of the chase, his arrows flying true as he brought down his prey. The days past Duryodhana's entourage made their way to the sacred lake of Dwaitavana, a place renowned for its beauty and tranquility. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, and the sound of bees buzzing from tree to tree created a soothing melody. The king's procession was met with a stunning sight, the lake itself shimmering like a sheet of molten gold in the sunlight. But their arrival was not without its complications, for as they approached the lake, a group of Gandharvas, celestial musicians and dancers, appeared out of nowhere, blocking their path. The king of the Gandharvas, accompanied by his Apsaras female attendants, and the sons of the gods, had already claimed the lake for themselves, intent on enjoying its beauty and tranquility. Duryodhana's attendants returned to him with the news, and the king, undeterred, dispatched a group of his most skilled warriors to persuade the Gandharvas to yield. But the celestial musicians were not ones to be. In the heart of the forest, a mighty battle unfolded between the Kuru soldiers, led by Duryodhana, and the Gandharvas under the wise command of Chitrasna. The Kuru warriors, fueled by rage and arrogance, had sought to defy the will of the celestial beings who dwelled within the forest. As the Kuru soldiers advanced towards the gates of the forest, they were met with a gentle warning from the Gandharvas, cautioning them against further progress. But Duryodhana's men, undeterred by words alone, pressed on, their war cries echoing through the trees. The Gandharvas, forced to take action, rallied behind Chitrasna and prepared for battle. A clash of steel on steel resounded through the forest as the two armies clashed. Karna, the Suta's son, stood tall amidst the chaos, his arrows flying swift and true as he felled Gandharva after Gandharva. His lightness of hand and skill with the bow allowed him to strike down hundreds of the celestial warriors. But still they came wave upon wave, their numbers seemingly endless, as the battle raged on. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath the feet of the combatants. The Kuru princes Duryodhana, Sakyani, and Dusasana rode forth with Karna at their lead, their chariots thundering through the forest like Garuda's wings. Together they charged into the fray, determined to crush the Gandharva host. But Chitrasna, wise and powerful as he was, would not be defeated so easily. He summoned his most potent magic and illusion that wrapped itself around the Kuru warriors like a shroud. Their senses reeled, their minds clouded by the celestial king's spell, and they stumbled about, lost in confusion. The Gandharvas, sensing victory within their grasp, pressed forward with renewed vigor. The Kuru host, leaderless and disoriented, began to falter. Panic set in as the warriors fled from the field, leaving behind only a few brave souls who stood steadfast against the tide of battle. Among these was Karna, that offspring of the sun, who remained immovable as a mountain peak, his heart unwavering despite the wounds he had sustained. Duryodhana and Sakyani fought on alongside him, though their bodies bore the marks of countless blows. The Gandharvas, determined to slay the Suta's son, closed in around him from all sides. Their swords and spears flashing in the sunlight as the battle reached its climax. Karna leaped from his shattered chariot, sword and shield at the ready. He sprang out of Vikarna's car, urging the steeds onward as he fled for his life, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. In the wake of his departure, the Gandhar was victorious, but where he emerged, the sun beat down on the battlefield as the Kuru army fled in disarray. King Duryodhana, however, stood firm, his determination unshaken despite the chalice around him. He refused to abandon his post even as the mighty host of Gandharvas rushed towards him. As the enemy closed in, Duryodhana unleashed a torrent of arrows, showering the battlefield with their deadly trajectory. But the Gandharvas, undaunted by the hail of steel, pressed on, their determination to capture the Kuru king unyielding with their arrows. They systematically dismantled Duryodhana's chariot, cutting through its yoke-shaft fenders and flagstaff as if it were made of straw. The Gandharvas' relentless assault continued until Duryodhana's charioteer and horses lay lifeless. On the ground, the king himself was thrown to the earth, his armor battered and bruised. It seemed as though all was lost for the Kuru dynasty, but fate had other plans. Chitrisna, a warrior of unyielding strength, rushed towards Duryodhana and seized him in a grip that seemed almost crushing. The Gandharvas surrounded their captive, their arrows trained on his vulnerable form. As the battle subsided, the Gandharvas turned their attention to the remaining members of the Kuru army. They took prisoner Dasesana, who sat trembling on his chariot, as well as Vivansatai and Chitrisna's brother Vinda. The ladies of the royal household were also swept up in the chalice, their screams echoing across the battlefield. The warriors who had fled with Duryodhana approached the Pandavas' encampment, pleading for aid. The mighty Arn, son of Dhritarashtra, is being taken captive by the Gandharvas. They cry, "Follow them." Dasesana, Durvashasa, Durmukha, and Durjaya are all being led away as captives in chains. Yudhishthira's attendants, overcome with grief and despair, begged for his intervention. Bhima, ever the fierce warrior, stood tall amidst their pleas, his words dripping with sarcasm. "What we should have done with great efforts, arraying ourselves in line of battle, supported by horses and elephants, hath indeed been done by the Gandharvas," he declared. The old attendants hung their heads in shame, knowing that Bhima's words were a harsh reminder of their own failure to protect their king. "This is the result of the evil counsels of a king who is fond of deceitful play." Bhima continued, "The foe of a person who is powerless is overthrown by others." Just as it seemed that Bhima's words would fuel further despair, Yudhishthira intervened, his voice calm and soothing. "This is not time." As the sun rose over the Pandava camp, Yudhishthira's voice echoed through the air. His words were laced with concern and the sense of responsibility towards the Kurus who had come to them seeking protection. "Why do you speak so harshly towards our guests?" he asked his brother Vrekadara, also known as Duryodhana. "They are in adversity, and we have vowed to protect them." Yudhishthira's eyes scanned the assembly before him, his voice growing more urgent with each passing moment. "Disputes between family members are inevitable," he acknowledged, "but our honor must never be compromised. If a stranger dares to insult us, we will not tolerate it." He paused, his gaze settling on Vrekadara once more. "And yet the king of the Gandharvas has done just that, taken Duryodhana captive and insulted the ladies of our household." Yudhishthira's voice rose in indignation as he continued to speak. "Our family honor is at stake, and we cannot simply stand by while it is trampled upon." He pointed towards the assembled warriors, his words dripping with conviction. "Arise, my brothers, arm yourselves, and ride forth to rescue those who have sought our protection, with Arjuna, Nakul, Sahadeva, and yourself leading the charge. I have no doubt that you will triumph over the Gandharvas." Yudhishthira finished speaking. A murmur of assent rippled through the assembly. Vrekadara's face set in determination. He nodded his head in agreement with his brother's words. "Arjuna," ever the warrior, spoke up next, his voice firm and resolute. "If the Gandharvas do not release our cousins peacefully, he vowed, the earth will drink their blood today." The assembly erupted into a chorus of cheers and shouts as the warriors prepared for battle. The sound of clashing steel echoed through the air as they mounted their chariots, ready to ride forth against the king of the Gandharvas. Yudhishthira watched them go with a sense of pride and purpose, knowing that his brothers were committed to upholding their family's honor. As the battle-ready warriors departed, Vasampayana stepped forward once more to recount the events of the day. Hearing Yudhishthira's words, he said, "Arjuna pledged himself to liberate the Kauravas, and his brothers followed suit. The old sage's voice grew softer as he continued to speak, and so with their vow to protect their families, honor renewed, the Pandavas rode forth to face the king of the Gandharvas. In that moment, Yudhishthira's words had sparked a fire within his brothers, a flame of determination and loyalty that the sun beat down upon the forest, casting a golden glow over the assembled warriors. Bhaisambhana's words had set the stage for the impending battle, and the Pandavas, those mighty sons of Pandu, rose to their feet with faces aglow with joy. Bhamasna, the fierce warrior, led the charge as they donned their impenetrable armor adorned with pure gold and grasped celestial weapons that shimmered in the sunlight as they mounted their chariots, their horses' hooves pounding the earth. The Pandavas resembled blazing fires ready to erupt. The Kuru army, sensing the approaching storm, let out a thunderous shout echoing through the forest like a challenge to the gods themselves. The Gandharvas, those rangers of the sky, flushed with victory and eager for battle, beheld the Pandavas fearless advance. The Gandharvas, their celestial armor glinting in the sunlight, stood arrayed in battle order, their faces set with determination. But when Arjuna, that persecutor of foes, addressed them with conciliatory words, urging them to release Duryodhana and his party, they loud aloud their voices, carrying on the winded child. One of them replied, "There is but one in the world whose behests we obey and under whose rule we live in happiness. We always act as that one only person commandeth us." Their words were a testament to the sway of their celestial king, and Arjuna knew that he must tread carefully if he was to persuade them. Dhananjay's eyes blazed with determination as he replied to the Gandharvas, "This contact with other people's wives and this hostile encounter with human beings are acts that are both censurable in the king of the Gandharvas and not proper for him. Therefore leave ye these sons of Dhritarashtra, all endued with mighty energy." He paused, his voice taking on a warning tone, and deliberated. "Ye also these ladies at the command of King Yudhishthira, the just." But when the Gandharvas refused to comply, Arjuna's patience wore thin. With a swift motion, he drew his bow and rained down a shower of sharp-pointed sky-raining shafts upon the celestial warriors. The battle was joined with the Pandavas and the Gandharvas, exchanging blows in a fierce and relentless exchange. The earth shook beneath their feet as the two armies clashed, their arrows flying thick and fast like a stormy tempest. Arjuna's aim was true, his arrows piercing the armor of the Gandharvas like a scythe cutting through wheat. But the celestial warriors refused to yield, their own arrows striking back with equal ferocity. The battle raged on. The forest itself seemed to come alive, its trees swaying in time with the In the realm of the gods, a celestial battle unfolded between the Pandavas, the illustrious sons of Pandu, and the Gandharvas, those mighty warriors from the skies. The Gandharvas, resplendent in golden garlands and armed with celestial weapons, descended upon the Pandavas like a stormy tempest. Thousands of Gandharvas surrounded Arjuna, Nacula, and Sahadeva, their arrows raining down upon them like a deluge. Arjuna, his ire provoked by the sheer number of Gandharvas, prepared to unleash his celestial arsenal. With a mighty roar, he charged forward, his Agnya weapon blazing with fiery fury. 10 hundreds of thousands of Gandharvas were sent tumbling to their dimness, vanishing into the realm of Yama like autumn leaves before a gust of wind. Vima, that formidable warrior among men, joined the fray, his sharp arrows slicing through the ranks of the Gandharvas like a scythe through wheat. The mighty sons of Madra, Nacula, and Sahadeva battled with vigor, their bows singing with deadly precision as they slaughtered hundreds of Gandharvas. As the battle raged on, the Gandharvas began to rise into the skies, taking Duryodhana and Karna with them. But Arjuna, his eyes fixed upon them, wove a net of arrows around them, entrapping them like birds in a cage. The Gandharvas showered down masses, darts, and broad swords. But Arjuna, master of the most efficacious weapons, deftly checked their assault. With a crescent-shaped arrow he began to mangle the limbs of the Gandharvas, sending heads, arms, and legs meeting down from above like a hail of stones. The foe was struck with panic as they beheld their comrades falling before them. The battle reached its climax when Arjuna unleashed his Thanakarna, Indrajilasara, Agnya, and Samya weapons. The Gandharvas, consumed by the fiery might of these celestial arms, began to suffer heavily, like the sons of Diti scorched by Sakra's thunderbolt. Chitrasna, king of the Gandharvas, rushed at Arjuna with a mighty mass, but the latter shattered it into 7 pieces with his arrows. Chitrasna, enraged and concealed from sight, began to fight Arjuna, but the Pandava warrior checked him with his celestial weapons. As the battle subsided, Chitrasna revealed himself exhausted, but unbroken. "Behold in me a friend battling with thee," he exclaimed, as Arjuna, filled with wrath, withdrew his weapons and ceased fighting. The other sons of Pandu followed suit, checking their steeds and withdrawing their bows. The two armies sat well on their respective. In the midst of the Gandharva, host Arjuna, the mighty Bowen, smiled as he asked Chitrasna, "What purpose do you serve, O hero, in punishing the Kauravas? Why has Sayadhana with his wives been punished?" The question hung in the air. Like a challenge, Chitrasna's eyes sparkled with conviction as he replied, "Dhananjaya, I've learned of Duryodhana's wicked intentions. He and Karna came here to mock you, and Draupadi, who are struggling in exile, they sought to see you in misery. But the Lord of the Celestials, knowing their purpose, told me to bring them before him." Chitrasna's voice rose with authority as he continued, "He instructed me to protect you and your brother at all costs, for you are dear friends and disciples." Arjuna's expression softened as he listened. He turned to Chitrasna and said, "If it pleases you, set Sayadhana free according to the command of King Yudhishthira the just, for he is our brother." But Chitrasna shook his head, his eyes darkening with disapproval. "This sinful wretch deserves no mercy. He has deceived and wronged both your brother and Krisha. Let the king decide what to do once he knows everything." The saying shifted as all of them made their way to Yudhishthira's presence. Chitrasna recounted Duryodhana's actions, and Ajatasattu listened intently. When the tale was finished, Ajatasattu applauded the Gandharvas for their mercy and set the Kauravas free. The king praised them, saying, "Fortunate it is for us that you did not slay the wicked son of Dhritarashtra along with his counselors and relatives. This act of kindness has saved our family's honor, and I am glad to see you." All the Gandharvas' faces lit up with joy as they accepted Yudhishthira's gratitude. They departed with the Apsaras, leaving behind a scene of reconciliation. The Lord of the Celestials appeared, reviving the fallen Gandharvas with the celestial Amrita. The Pandavas, having liberated their relatives and achieved victory, felt a sense of relief wash over them as they worshipped the Kauravas along with their sons and wives. The air was filled with an otherworldly light. Yudhishthira addressed Duryodhana, his words laced with affection and concern. "O child, never again do such rash acts. A rash wight never comes by happiness. Son of the Kuru race, peace be with all the brothers. Go back to your capital as you please without yielding to despondency or cheerlessness." Duryodhana's face was. The sun had long since set on the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the landscape as King Yudhishthira's forces marched towards Hastinapura. Among them was Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana. His head hung low in shame and his heart heavy with grief. The once proud prince had been defeated by the sons of Pandu, and now he was forced to return to his city accompanied by his remaining forces. As they journeyed, the king's mind was consumed by thoughts of his defeat and the loss of his kin. He thought about the battles fought and won, but ultimately lost. The region they passed through was lush and green, with grasses swaying gently in the breeze and water flowing from nearby streams. Despite the beauty around him, Duryodhana's spirit was crushed. After a long and arduous journey, the king finally arrived at a suitable place to set up camp. His elephants, cars, cavalry, and infantry were stationed all around, forming a formidable defensive perimeter. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of pink and purple, Duryodhana settled onto an elevated bedstead that glowed with a soft fiery light. Was then that Karna approached him, his face aglow with excitement and pride. "Fortunate it is, O son of Gandhara," Karna said, "that you are alive. Fortunate it is that we have once more met." He spoke in a tone that was almost reverent, as if he were speaking to a god. Duryodhana's eyes were rimmed from tears, and he looked up at Karna with a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "Varna continued, by good luck it is that you have vanquished the Gandharvas, capable of assuming any form at will, and, O son of the Kuru race, it is by good luck alone I am enabled to see your brothers, mighty warriors, all come off victorious from that encounter, having subjugated their foes." He paused for a moment, his eyes scanning Duryodhana's face before speaking again. "But tell me, O parrot," Karna said, "what is this great marvel that I behold you and your brothers safe and sound in body, with your wives, troops, and vehicles out of that superhuman encounter? There must be another man in this world who can achieve what you have achieved in battle today." His words were laced with admiration and awe, but also a hint of envy. Duryodhana's voice cracked as he replied to Karna's words, his emotions finally breaking free from the dam that had held them back for so long. The sun was setting over the vast expanse of the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the weary warriors. Duryodhana, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, stood tall amidst his troops, his eyes fixed on Radia, his trusted commander Radia. He said, his voice heavy with emotion, "You know not what has transpired here today." Radia's expression turned questioning, and Duryodhana continued, "My brothers, my friends, we have fought valiantly against the Gandharvas, our enemies from the skies." The battle raged on for a long time, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But when those brave Gandharvas employed their mastery of illusion, ascending to the heavens and fighting us from above, our chances of victory began to dwindle. Duryodhana's words hung in the air like a challenge, as if daring Radia to contradict him. We were no match for them. He continued, his voice laced with sorrow. Our defeat was inevitable, and soon we found ourselves being led away, captive by the Gandharvas, our attendants, counselors, children, wives, troops, and vehicles, all. And 'twas Duryodhana spoke. A group of his soldiers and officers approached him, their faces etched with worry. They had fled to the Pandavas, those heroes known for their unwavering generosity, seeking their aid. "Here is King Duryodhana," they said, their voices urgent. "He, along with his younger brothers, friends, wives, and entire retinue, is being taken captive by the Gandharvas through the skies. Please, noble Pandavas, liberate him. Spare no insult to the ladies of the Kuru clan." The eldest son of Pandu, Yudhishthira, listened attentively to their plea, his eyes shining with compassion. He turned to his brothers and counseled them, "Let us not stand idly by while our enemies are treated thus. We must act with kindness and honor." And so the Pandavas rallied to Duryodhana's cause. Arjuna, Emma, and the twins Nakula and Sahadeva led the charge against the Gandharvas, their bows singing as they shot arrow after arrow into the fray. The Gandharvas, the formidable foes, were no match for the Pandavas' bravery and skill. They retreated through the skies, dragging Duryodhana's retinue behind them. As the battle subsided, Arjuna's network of arrows stretched across the horizon like a celestial web. Chitrasna, the chief Gandharva, emerged from the melee, his armor battered but unbroken. He and Arjuna exchanged warm greetings, their faces filled with joy at being reunited. The other Pandavas also welcomed Chitrasna, warmly embracing him. In the midst of a great battle, Duryodhana, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, found himself in an unprecedented predicament. His brothers, the Pandavas, had captured him along with his loyal friend Karna, and were holding them captive. As he reflected on his situation, Duryodhana's thoughts turned to his own shame and misery. He addressed Arjuna, the renowned warrior of the Pandava army, saying, "O hero foremost of the Gandharvas, it behooves you to set my brothers at liberty. They are incapable of being insulted as long as the sons of Pandu are alive." But Duryodhana's words were laced with a deep sense of despair, for he knew that his own fate was sealed. As he spoke, Karna revealed their intentions to Arjuna, and the Pandavas, the Gandharvas, accompanied by the Pandavas, then went to Yudhishthira, who had been holding Duryodhana captive. They disclosed their plans to him, and in a shocking turn of events, Duryodhana found himself being handed over to his enemies. Overwhelmed with shame and grief, Duryodhana reflected on the irony of his situation. He who had once been a formidable warrior was now at the mercy of those he had once despised. "If I had met with my death in that great battle," he thought, "that would have been far better than that I should have obtained my life in this way." His pride wounded, Duryodhana felt that his very existence had become insupportable. He stood there lost in his thoughts. Duryodhana turned to his brother Dussasana and spoke words of resignation. "O Dussasana, listen to these words of mine," he said, "accepting this installation that I'd offer thee, be the king in my place, rule though the wide earth protected by Karna and Sova's sons." But Duryodhana's words were tinged with a sense of defeat, for he knew that his own reign was at an end. Dussasana, overcome with grief, fell to the ground, begging his brother to relent. "This will never be," he cried. "The earth may split, the vault of heaven may break in pieces, yet I, O king, may never rule the earth without thee." And as Dussasana wept at his brother's feet, Karna approached them, trying to reason with them. Kuru Princess Karna said, "Why do you thus yield to sorrow like ordinary man? Mere weeping can never ease a sorrowing man's grief. Summon patience to your aid, to not gladden the foe by such conduct." But Duryodhana and Dussasana were beyond consolation, their hearts heavy with grief. In the midst of a great sorrow, King Duryodhana sat on the ground, his eyes fixed on the horizon. His friend and advisor Karna stood before him, trying to reason with the king's despair. "O King Karna," began, "this conduct of thine today appears childish. O hero, O slayer of foes, what is to be wondered at in this, that the Pandavas liberated He, when thou'rt vanquished by the full Karna, walked closer to the king, his voice filled with conviction. O son of the Kuru race, those who reside in the territories of the king, especially those among them who lead the profession of arms, should always do what is agreeable to the king, whether they happen to be known to their monarch or unknown to him. He paused for a moment as if collecting his thoughts. It has often happened that foremost men who crush the ranks of the hostile host are vanquished by them and are rescued by their own troops. Karna's words seemed to stir something within the king. He spoke with great passion, his voice rising and falling like the waves of a mighty river. If therefore, O king, the Pandavas who live in the territories have liberated thee, what is there to be regretted at in this? That the Pandavas, O best of kings, did not follow thee when thou didst march forth to battle at the head of the troops has been an improper act on their part. The king's eyes seemed to cloud over as he listened to Karna's words. His mind was a battlefield torn between reason and despair. But Karna pressed on, his voice steady and reassuring. They had before this come under thee power, becoming thee slaves. They are therefore bound to aid thee now, being endued with courage and might, and incapable of turning away from the field of battle. As Karna spoke, he gestured towards the Pandavas who sat near by, their eyes cast down in submission. Behold them, yet alive, O king, they have not resolved to die, foregoing all food. He paused, his voice filled with compassion. Blessed be thou, O king, rise up, O king, it behoveth thee not to indulge in great sorrow long. But the king remained unmoved, his resolve unshaken. Karna's words seemed to fall on deaf ears, and he knew that he had to try a different approach. He spoke with humility, his voice filled with devotion. O king, if thou resolvest to slay thyself by foregoing food, thou wilt simply be an object of laughter with other kings. He knelt down beside the king, his hands clasped together in supplication. Vana, who had been watching the scene unfold, spoke up, now thus addressed by Karna. In the midst of the great war, King Duryodhana sat on the ground, his resolve unwavering. He had chosen to fast unto death, unable to bear the insult inflicted upon him by the Pandavas. Sekanai, the cunning son of Suvala, approached him with words of comfort. As son of the Kuru race, Sekanai said, why would you abandon the prosperity I have won for you? Cast off your life today, yielding to foolishness. He continued to speak, his voice laced with reason and wisdom. A king who cannot control sudden joy or grief is lost like an unburnt earthen vessel in water. That king who is entirely destitute of courage, who has no spark of manliness, is seldom respected by his subjects. Duryodhana's eyes remained fixed on the ground as Sekanai spoke, his heart heavy with sorrow. He had indeed been benefited by the Pandavas' generosity, and yet he found himself grieving for their kingdom. His behavior was inconsistent, a mix of joy and despair that threatened to consume him. As Sekanai finished speaking, Duryodhana's brother, Dussasana, lay prostrate before him, unmoved by fraternal love. The king raised him in his arms, smote his head from affection, but it only seemed to deepen his sorrow. He had lost all sense of virtue, wealth, friendship, and sovereignty. His heart was now fixed on one thing, death. The words of Sekanai and the others had no effect on Duryodhana's resolve. He continued to fast, his body weakened by hunger and thirst, but he refused to give in. His spirit unbroken in a final act of defiance, he spread Cusa grass on the ground, purified himself with water, and sat down to observe the highest vows. He began to pray and worship internally. The Daityas and Danavas, ancient enemies of the gods, sensed the opportunity. They had been dwelling in the nether regions for centuries, waiting for a chance to weaken their foes. They discovered Duryodhana's purpose and commenced the sacrifice with fire. Summoning him to their presence, the Brahmins, well versed in the Vedas and Upanishads, poured libations of clarified butter and milk into the fire. Uttering mantras, the air was filled with a sweet scent of incense as they invoked the gods. And then a strange goddess arose from the sacrificial fire, her mouth wide open. What am I to do? She asked, her voice like thunder in the night. The Daityas commanded her, and she set off towards Duryodhana's location. In an instant she appeared before him, took hold of his hand, and transported him back to the nether regions. The Danavas beheld their king brought into their midst in the dead of night. In the midst of a grand assembly, the Danavas stood before King Sayodhana, their words dripping with concern and urgency. O great king, they said, why have you taken this rash vow of starvation? Does it not bring shame to your name and imperil your very soul? They spoke of his divine heritage, born from the celestial union of Mahaswara, and his goddess, his upper body, forged from Vajras, was invulnerable to harm, while his lower half, crafted from flowers by the goddess herself, held a mesmerizing beauty that captivated hearts. The Danavas revealed to Sayadhana that he was not human, but of celestial origin, born to rule over mortals. They told him that brave Kshatriyas, led by Vigadatta, would soon arrive with knowledge of celestial weapons and the power to vanquish his foes. Moreover, hundreds of thousands of deities and Rakshasas had been appointed to aid Sayadhana, including those known as Samsaptakas, who would slay Arjuna on their behalf. Moved by these words, the Danavas leader Vaisampayana continued to speak. O king, do not yield to despondency. Conduct such as this does not suit. You are our refuge, just as the Pandavas are the refuge of the gods. They pacified Sayadhana's mind with soft speech and permitted him to depart, saying, Go it in victory. As he rose from his despair, Sayadhana considered all that had transpired as a dream. He thought within himself, I shall defeat the Pandavas in battle, and his resolve strengthened. Karna, too, had cruelly determined to slay Arjuna, his soul possessed by the inmost soul of Naraka. Next day, Karna approached Sayadhana with joined hands, smelling warmly as he addressed him. No dead man conquers his foes. It is when he is alive that he can see his good. Where is the good of the dead person? And O Karavya, where is his victory? He promised to slay Arjuna in battle, swearing by his weapon that when the 3 and 10 years had passed, he would bring the sons of Pritha under Sayadhana's subjection. Moved by Karna's words, Sayadhana rose with a firm resolve in his heart. He arrayed his army, abounding in horses, elephants, cars, and infantry, with white umbrellas, pennons, chamaras, and foot soldiers, swarming like the waters of the Ganga. The mighty army moved like the firmament at a season when autumn signs had barely begun to develop. As they marched towards their city, Sayadhana was eulogized by Bra. In the midst of a grand forest where the mighty sons of Pritha dwelled, Janamejaya sat in contemplation. He turned to Vaisampayana and asked, Tell me, what did those illustrious sons of Dhritarashtra do during their sojourn here, and how did Karna, the offspring of the sun and Sakanai, Bhishma, Drona, and Kripa, conduct themselves? Vaisampayana began his tale, recounting the events that had transpired when the Pandavas departed, leaving Sayadhana behind. He came to Hastinapura, where Bhishma addressed him with words of caution. The child said, Bhishma, I have warned you against this journey, but you chose to disregard my counsel. As a result, you were taken captive by the enemy and rescued by the Pandavas, who are virtuous in their ways. Yet you do not seem ashamed of your actions. Bhishma's words pierced Sayadhana's heart like an arrow, and he laughed mockingly before departing with Sakanai at his side. But Bhishma's words had struck a chord within him, and as he left, the old warrior hung his head in shame. Meanwhile, Sayadhana returned to his quarters, where he began to confer with his counselors. What is best for us? He asked them, How can we bring about our desired outcome? Karna spoke up, his words dripping with passion and conviction. O Duryodhana, listen well to my counsel. Bhishma always criticizes us and praises the Pandavas. His ill will towards you has turned into hatred for me as well. I shall not bear these insults in your presence any longer. Karna's words ignited a fire within Sayadhana, and he ordered his trusted advisor to prepare for battle. I shall conquer the earth single-handedly. Karna declared, his voice filled with determination. Let Bhishma witness my might and see that I am not inferior to the Pandavas in any aspect, whether it be valor, morality, or skill in arms. Suryodhana's heart swelled with pride as he listened to Karna's words, and he praised him lavishly. I am blessed, he exclaimed. You have always been intent on my welfare, and I am grateful for your loyalty. With a newfound sense of purpose, Sayadhana gave the order to begin preparations for their campaign against the Pandavas. As the auspicious day dawned, Karna set out surrounded by his loyal companions, and the rattle of his chariot echoing through the 3 worlds. The earth itself seemed to tremble with anticipation as this mighty warrior embarked on a journey that would change the course of his story forever. In the city of Hastinapura, a grand celebration was underway to honor the mighty warrior Karna. The sun shone brightly as Vaisampayana, a wise sage, began to recount the tale of Karna's conquests. Obol among the Bharatas, he said, Karna, that formidable actor, surrounded by his vast army, laid siege to the beautiful city of Drupada. People of Hastinapura listened with rapt attention as Vaisampayana continued with unwavering determination. Karna fought a fierce battle and ultimately brought Drupada under subjection. The vanquished king was forced to contribute gold, silver gems, and pay tribute to the mighty warrior, as if to emphasize the magnitude of Karna's victory. Vaisampayana described how he then conquered the princes who had been under Drupada's rule and made them submit to his authority. The tale of Karna's conquests unfolded like a majestic epic poem. He marched northward, defeating the mighty Vagadatta and ascending the towering Himavat mountain, all while battling fierce foes along the way. The people of Hastinapura held their collective breath as Vaisampayana recounted how Karna conquered and subjugated the kings inhabiting the Himavat region, making them pay tribute with his northern campaign complete. Karna turned his attention to the east, where he reduced the mighty kingdoms of Aina, Baina, Kalinga, Mandika, Magadha, Karkakandas, Avasaris, Yodayas, and Ahishatras. The people of Hastinapura were in awe as Vaisampayana described how Karna presented himself before the powerful kingdom of Vatsabhumi, where he vanquished its ruler and compelled him to pay tribute. As Karna's conquests continued, he marched southward, defeating the mighty charioteers of Dakshinatya in a fierce battle. Rukmai, the son of Bhishma, fought valiantly against Karna, but ultimately surrendered, acknowledging his opponent's superior might and prowess. The people of Hastinapura listened with bated breath as Vaisampayana recounted how Karna met with Rukmai and then proceeded to conquer the kingdoms of Pandya, and through with his southern campaign complete. Karna turned his attention to the west, where he vanquished Sisipala's son and brought all the neighboring rulers under his sway. He also conquered the Avantis and concluded a peace treaty with them before meeting with the Vrishas and defeating their armies. The people of Hastinapura were left speechless as Vaisampayana described how Karna conquered the entire earth, east, west, north, and south, subjugating all the nations of the Mlech. In the bustling kingdom of Hastinapura, a grand scheme was unfolding under the guidance of Karna, the Suva's son, and a renowned warrior. Vaisampayana, the storyteller, stood before King Dhritarashtra, recounting the events that would shape the fate of the Kauravas. Karna spoke to Duryodhana, his words dripped with conviction. O Kaurava, lay these words in your heart and act accordingly. The earth has been rid of foes' rule, her like Sakra himself, having destroyed all enemies. Dhritarashtra's son listened intently, his ambition burning brighter with each passing moment. Karna continued, nothing is unattainable for one who has me as their refuge. I have a purpose, and you shall listen to it. The Pandavas' Rajeshriya sacrifice has stirred a desire within you. I shall help fulfill this dream. Duryodhana's eyes sparkled with excitement as he entrusted Karna with the task of making his vision a reality. With Karna at the helm, the king summoned the principal Brahmanas to guide him in performing the grand Rajeshriya sacrifice. The priest, wise and learned, cautioned Dhritarashtra's son, while Yudhishthira lives, this sacrifice cannot be performed in your family. Your father Dhritarashtra is still alive. For these reasons, it would not be wise to undertake this endeavor. But the king was undeterred. The Brahmanas proposed an alternative, the Vaishava sacrifice, a mighty ritual that rivaled the Rajeshriya in grandeur and virtue. This sacrifice has never been performed before, they said, except by the ancient Vishu himself. It is capable of being celebrated without disturbance, and it will fulfill your desire. Karna and Duryodhana exchanged a glance, their minds made up. The king turned to Karna and his brother Suvala's son and asked for their approval. The brothers nodded in unison, and the king appointed artisans to construct the sacrificial plough. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the kingdom of Hastinapura buzzed with activity, each person working tirelessly to bring the Vaishnava sacrifice to life. With Karna's guidance, the preparations progressed smoothly, each task executed with precision. The kingdom was abuzz with excitement, and Duryodhana's ambition had never burned brighter. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, the stage was set for a grand spectacle that would change the course of his story forever. In the bustling city of Hastinapura, the preparations for a grand sacrifice were underway. The artisans, counselors, and wise Vidura approached Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana to inform him that all was ready for the magnificent ritual. They presented him with a golden plough, an exquisite symbol of their devotion to the gods. Dhritarashtra's son, eager to begin the ceremony, gave his royal approval, and the sacrifice commenced. The sacred mantras were chanted, and the air was filled with the aroma of delicious offerings. Duryodhana's mother Gandhara and his father Dhritarashtra, along with Vidura, Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Karna, All experienced great joy as they witnessed the initiation of their son Duryodhana, dispatched swift messengers to invite the princes and brahmanas from far and wide. One such messenger arrived at the forest of Dwaita, where he found the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Hemant, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva, living a simple life in exile. The messenger, with a mixture of curiosity and urgency, approached them and delivered his message from Duryodhana Yudhishthira. Ever the just king listened attentively to the messenger's words and reply. We are indeed honored by the invitation, but we must respectfully decline for now. We have vowed to observe our penance for another 13 years, Vemma. However, couldn't resist adding a hint of mischief to their response. Tell Duryodhana that when I will pour the clarified butter of my ire upon his family only, then will we attend his sacrifice. The messenger returned to Hastinapura and shared the Pandavas' words with Duryodhana. At Kaurava, Prince was taken aback by Vema's bold statement, but he chose not to take offense. Since the days passed, many noble men from various kingdoms and virtuous brahmanas arrived in Hastinapura to attend the grand sacrifice. They were received with great honor and hospitality by Dhritarashtra and his sons. Vidur, ever attentive to the needs of their guests, ensured that they were well refreshed and satisfied. As the festival reached its climax, Duryodhana's joy knew no bounds as he saw his father surrounded by their noble guests, and all these with a heart full of pride. He instructed Vidura to make sure that all who had come to attend the sacrifice felt welcome and content. A grand ceremony finally came to an end, and with it the festivities. Duryodhana bade farewell to his esteemed guests, showering them with gifts and wealth as they departed. He returned to Hastinapura, surrounded by his brothers and close companions, Karna and Suvala's son. As Duryodhana, the prince of unfailing prowess, entered the city with his entourage, the panegyrists eulogized him with fervent praise. The citizens, eager to show their admiration, sprinkled fried paddy and sandal pasts on him, exclaiming, "By good luck, it is, O king, that this sacrifice hath been completed without obstruction." But not everyone was pleased with Duryodhana's grand achievement. Some reckless speakers present at the occasion dared to say, "Surely the sacrifice cannot be compared with Yudhishthira's, nor doth this come up to a 16th part of that sacrifice." Their words stung Duryodhana, but his friends came to his defense, saying, "This sacrifice of thine hath surpassed all others. Yatai and Nasha and Mandhata and Bharata, having been sanctified by celebrating such a sacrifice, have all gone to heaven, reassured by their words." Duryodhana entered the city, worshipping the feet of his father and mother as well as those of Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Viduras. He sat down on an excellent seat, surrounded by his younger brothers. The Suta's son Karna rose to congratulate him. "By good luck, it is, O foremost of the Bharata race, that this mighty sacrifice of thine hath been brought to a close." Karna said. Duryodhana smiled, replying, "Truly hath this been spoken by thee, when, O foremost of men, the wicked-minded Pandavas have been slain, and when also the grand Rajeshriya hath been celebrated by me. Then thou shalt again, O hero, honor me." Thus, with a promise made, Duryodhana's thoughts turned to the Rajeshriya sacrifice, that most prestigious of rituals. He began to think about how he would celebrate it once the Pandavas were defeated. As Karna stood before him, Duryodhana asked, "When shall I, ye Kauravas, having slain all the Pandavas, celebrate that costly and foremost of sacrifices, the Rajeshriya?" Karna's eyes gleamed with determination as he replied, "Hear me, O elephant among kings. So long as I do not slay Arjuna, I shall not allow anyone to wash my feet, nor shall I taste meat, and I shall observe the azure vow, and whoever may solicit me for anything, I never shall say, I have it not." With Karna's vow to slay Arjuna, the mighty charioteers and bowmen of the Kauravas sent up a loud cheer, thinking that the Pandavas had already been conquered. Meanwhile, in the forest, the Pandavas heard about Duryod. In the midst of their exile, Janamejaya, a wise and inquisitive king, sought to know about the fate of his illustrious cousins, the Pandavas. He asked Vaisampayana, a venerable sage, after releasing Duryodhana from their clutches, what did the mighty sons of Pandu do in that forest? "I wish to hear this tale of Vaisampayana," began to recount a story, his voice filled with reverence. And all one evening, as Yudhishthira lay down to rest in the Dwaita woods, a remarkable occurrence took place in his dreams. A group of deer appeared before him, their eyes brimming with tears. They stood with joined hands, their bodies trembling all over as if overcome by fear and sorrow. Yudhishthira, the wise and compassionate king, opened his eyes to behold these creatures. He asked them gently, Tell me what you wish to say. Who are you, and what do you desire? The deer, still quivering with emotion, replied, in a collective voice, their words barely above. O whisper, we are the remnants of those that have been slaughtered, O Bharata. We shall soon be exterminated completely. Therefore, mighty king, we beg of you to change your resistance moved by the pleas of these deer. Yudhishthira's heart swelled with grief and compassion. He saw in them the fate of countless creatures who had perished at their hands. The king, intent on the welfare of all beings, said unto them, So be it. I shall act as you have said. And with that he awoke from his dream as the night wore on.